name is Rich Howell. I teach 4th grade at Pleasant Valley School, and today you're going to hear from some of my 4th grade readers.
Hi, my name is Travis. I'm going to read Aliens Don't Wear Braces. Howard hung his purple book bag in his 3rd grade classroom at Barely Elementary School. Did you study for the science test? He asked his friend Eddie. Eddie scratched his curly red hair and dropped his book bag on the floor. Nah, who needs science anyways? I like science, Howard told them, especially when it's about outer space. You would. You have plenty of empty space between your ears, Eddie laughed and headed for a seat. The other kids in the class were busy copying math problems from the board. Mrs. Jeepers, their teacher, was already having everyone working. There was something strange about Mrs. Jeepers. Their 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Jeepers, was from the Transylvania Alps, and some kids thought she was a vampire. Her long hair was the color of a jack-o'-lantern, and a black bracelet hung from her wrist. Mrs. Jeepers had a way of flashing her green eyes that made kids think twice about causing trouble. Eddie slid into his seat and tore a piece of paper from his notebook. He was the only half-finished copying the math problems when Mrs. Jeepers spoke in her Transylvania accent. It's time to take the science test. Please clear off your desk. Sophie was between Eddie. He twirled one of his black pigtails. Oh, I hope I get a good grade, don't you? Carly was behind Moby. I studied all week and I'm sure I'll get the highest grade. Eddie shrugged. Who cares? Lizzie, a girl in front of Eddie, turned to look at him. Did you study? I didn't. Did you? After all, it's a big test. I hope my nose doesn't start bleeding. When Lizzie was really upset, her nose usually bleeds. I'll give you a bloody nose. Eddie kicked hold of his fist. Mophie glared at Eddie and hung with Lizzie with a weight of tissues. Leave Lizzie alone or I'll give you a bloody nose. Eddie didn't have time to answer because Mrs. Jeepers put a paper on his desk. There will be no talking, she told the students. You may begin. Eddie looked at the first question. He swallowed hard and looked at the next question. He was staring at the second page for something he could answer when he heard a noise. It sounded like someone was playing a low-note tuba. The hum grew louder and louder until the windows rattled. Modi stepped her hands over her ears, and Lizzie whimpered, What's that? Suddenly all the lights flickered and went out. Thank you for listening to my read. If you want to hear the rest of the story, you can check it out at your local library.
My name is Dane, and the title of this book is Henry and Mug and the Bedtime Thumps. The chapter is To Grandma's House. Henry and his big dog Mug were going to the country with Henry's parents. Henry was reading comic books. Mug was chewing his toenails. They were going to visit Henry's grandmother. Henry's grandmother had never met Mug, so Henry worried. He worried that Mug might drool on her skirt. He worried that Mug might eat her coffee table, but mostly he worried that Mug might have to sleep outside. Mug had never slept outside before, and if Mug slept outside, Henry would be alone, trying to sleep in an empty room in a strange house in a dark yard in the country. Henry read his comic books and worried. The longer he rode, the more he worried. Soon he began to bite his fingernails. Chew, bite, spit. Chew, bite, spit. Henry bit his fingernails, Mug chewed his toenails, and the car drove on. After riding for a long time, Henry and Mug saw the grandmother's house. It had a bird bath and a garden full of corn. Henry and Mug looked at each other. Their fingernails and toenails were very short. Henry's grandmother came outside. She had a big smile and a polka dot dress. Mug took one look at her and his tail wagged and wagged and wagged. "Hello, sweetie," Henry's grandmother said to Henry. She hugged him tight. "Hello, sweetie," Henry's grandmother said to Mug. She hugged him tight. Henry's grandmother wiped dog drool off her sleeve, and they followed her into the house. Henry's grandmother's house was very small. It had a lot of tables and things on the tables. Henry looked at Mug, and for the first time wished that Mug was smaller, shorter, thinner. Mug looked like an elephant in a phone booth, and before too long, Mug knocked a pink flamingo off a table. "Ah, Mug," Henry said. Thank you for listening to me read, and if you want to hear the rest of the book, go visit your local library.
Hi, my name is Rebecca, and I'm reading Julian, the Secret Agent. It was the morning when the sun stayed in bed. It was a morning when the clouds had pillow fights. It was a morning when it looked like it could rain rubber boots, submarines, lost pirate ships, sunken treasures, a whole new world. My best friend Gloria, my little brother Huey, and I were in the post office mailing some letters for my mother. When we finished, the rain started. We couldn't leave. We were all alone in the post office lobby. The rain was pounding down on the roof. Gloria and I stared at a window. We couldn't see anything but water. "This is like living in an aquarium," Gloria said. When can we go home?" Huey asked. "Don't worry," I said. "Someday tomorrow, next week, next month. It's got to stop raining." We looked around the lobby. There was a poster explaining how to collect stamps. There was a notice about how much it cost to mail things. There was a bunch of papers hanging on the hook on the wall. Gloria took the papers off their hook. We looked at them over her shoulder. Every page had a set of fingerprints at the bottom of 2 photos of a person in the middle, and big letters at the top of each page. It was wanted, citizens alert, reports on criminals, I said. "Right," Gloria said. She started reading out loud. Evelyn Gertrude Smith held up 5 cents, $31.25 in quarters. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to see the end of the book, look at your local library. My name is Jeanette, and I'm going to read a book is December Secrets. Emily O'Wara a bit down on her pencil. Then she started to write. The firefighters is our friends. He puts out fires. He come to school, he takes you for a ride in his truck. Something didn't look right. Emily raised her head. How do you spell truck? She asked Mrs. Roney. Good question, Emily, said Mrs. Roney. She wrote truck on the blackboard. The fire truck is in the school year. Emily whispered in her friend's Rachel's best. I can hear the sirens beast. Me too, Beast said. He was drawing a big red truck. Right then, the firefighter was giving another class a ride on one of the kids would be sitting up front in the front with the firefighter. Emily thought he'd be wearing a big black hat, big fire hat. He'd be raining the siren. Mrs. Roney's class would be next. Emily's pop. She'd be in the front wearing the. Thank you to listen to me read. If you want to read the rest of it, go to your local library.
Hi, my name is Ellie and I'm going to read Socks. The tabby kitten hooked his white paws over the edge of the bark box. The kitten's 25 cents or best offer. The girl with the stringy hair and sunburned arms picked him up and set him down in the midst of his wiggling, crawling, meowing brothers and sisters. He wanted to get out, and she wanted him to stay in the puzzling struggle. He had gone on all morning. The space between the mailbox and the newspaper rack near the door of the supermarket. Nice fresh kittens for sale, called out the girl, whose name was Debbie. She usually held the kitten in her arms. She expected her to hold him now. Stupid, said her brother. George embraced him to be selling kittens with his younger sister on a summer morning. Whoever heard of fresh kittens? Me, said Debbie, and as she pushed the kitten down once more. Then she at the top of her voice. Nice fresh kittens for sale. She knew she was not stupid, and she enjoyed annoying her brother. The two had for breakfast. George and Debbie said should sell the kittens because she played with them and she made them hers. Debbie, said George, should sell the kittens because she didn't know how to make change. Besides, he was the one who had brought the mother home when she was a kitten, so that made her kittens his. Their father said, stop bickering. You two, you can both sell them. And that was that. The white-pawed kitten, aware of the hard feelings between brother and sister, tried again. He stepped on another kitten, and this time managed to lift his chin over the rim of the carton. His surprised blue eyes took in a parking lot full of shoppers, pushing grocery carts, among carts glittering in the summer heat. He was fantastic. If you want to read the rest of the book, go to your local library.
Thank you for your support.
No, your name.
Mrs. Gorf had a long tongue.
No, your name.
Okay. Oh, my name is Kyle, and I'm reading Sideways Story from my side school. Mrs. Gorf had a long tongue and pointy ears. She was the meanest teacher in Wayside School. She taught the class on the 13th story. If you children are bad, she warned, or if you are a problem wrong, I'll wiggle my ears, stick out my tongue, and turn you into apples. Mrs. Gorf didn't like children, but she loved apples. Joe couldn't add, he couldn't even count, but he knew that if he answered a problem wrong, he would be turned into an apple, so he copied from John. He didn't like to cheat, but Mrs. Gorf had never taught him how to add. One day, Mrs. Gorf caught Joe copying John's paper. She wiggled her ears, first her right one, then her left one. Then she stuck out her tongue and turned Joe into an apple. Then she turned John into an apple for letting Joe cheat. Hey, that isn't fair, said Todd. John was only trying to help a friend. Mrs. Gorf wiggled her ears, first her right, then her left, stuck out her tongue, and turned Todd into an apple. Does anybody else have an opinion, she asked. Nobody said a word. Mrs. Gorf laughed and placed the 3 apples on her desk. Stephen started to cry. He couldn't help it. He was scared. I do not allow crying in this classroom, said Mrs. Gorf. She wiggled her ears first, her right one, then her left one, stuck out her tongue, and turned Stefan into an apple. For the rest of the day, the children were absolutely quiet, and when they went home, they were too scared even to talk to their parents. But Joe, John, Todd, and Stefan couldn't go home. Mrs. Gorf just left them on her desk. They were able to talk to each other, but they didn't have much to say. Their parents were very worried. They didn't know where their children were. If you would like to listen to the rest of the story, check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Kelsey. The book I'm going to read is Merry Christmas, Emil de Bedeelde. Emil de Bedeelde said, Miss Rogers, Christmas is just around the corner. It is? Said Emil de Bedeelde. Which corner? Miss Rogers laughed and said, I mean tomorrow is Christmas Day. I know that, said Emil de Bedeelde. There's still so much to do, said Miss Rogers. We'll never finish. We'll make it, said Emil de Bedeelde. Just tell me what to do. First, said Miss Rogers, make a date cake. Put lots of dates in it. All right, said Emil de Bedeelde. She started into the kitchen. Wait, said Miss Rogers. Put these nuts in the cake too. She gave Emil de Bedeelde a bag of nuts. Anything else, said Emil de Bedeelde. Some popcorn, said Miss Rogers. I want to make popcorn balls. How should I pot? Said Imelda. I need 6 cups, said Miss Rogers. Imelda Bedeelde went into the kitchen. I'd never heard her tell of date cakes, she said, but I'll try my hand at it. Imelda Bedeelde put some of this and a little of that into the bowl. She mixed and mixed. Soon the batter was ready. Now, she said, I need lots of dates. About this, a calendar, she said, that has lots of dates. Imelda Bedeelde got a calendar. She cut off all the dates and dumped them into the cake. Now for the nuts, said Amelia Potato. She opened the bag of nuts. She dumped them into the cake. Amelia Potato to make some more. Then she put the cake in the oven. I'll make spice cake too, she said. I love spice cake. So Amelia Potato made spice cake. Now for the popcorn, she said. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to figure out how the story ends, go to your local library and check it out.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I'm reading Claudia and the New Girl. I've been watching this fly for ages. First it landed on the back of Austin Bentley's head and crawled around in his hair for a full minute. Then it had flown to Doreen's right sneaker, but had to move when Doreen used her sneaker to scratch the back of her left leg. It tried Pete Black's pencil, but Pete flicked the pencil immediately and sent the fly on its way again. I wondered whether the fly was a boy or a girl. I wondered whether flies have families. I wondered whether flies have family reunions and decided they didn't because family reunions are almost always picnics, and at a flies picnic, how could you tell the guest flies from the regular uninvited flies who just wanted to land on the food for a while? Then I wondered what it would be like to look out through those gigantic fly eyes and whether flies would say eyesight or fly sight. I wondered whether the fly found English class as boring as I did. I'll say this about Miss Hall, our teacher. She at least tries to make the class interesting. For instance, most of our English classes in our grade have to read The Yearling and A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. Mrs. Hall is doing something different with us. This big project on books that have won the Newbery Award. This gives us a pretty wide selection of books, and some of them are an awful lot shorter than The Yearling, but the thing is, I just don't like to read, except for Nancy Drew mysteries. They're fun, and I'm a pretty good solution. Mrs. Hall was talking about from the mixed up flies of Miss Basil E. Frank. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to see the end of this book, you can check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Maria, and I'm reading Hank the Cow Dog. It's me again, Hank the Cow Dog. As I recall, it was the 14th of May when the silver monster bird swooped down on the ranch and threatened us to death with destruction. Or was it May 15th? It could have been the 16th. Anyway, the silver monster birds are huge creatures with a body that's long as cane, resembles the body of a snake, which makes me think they might be a crossbreed between a bird and a reptile. The head of the short confirms that because in the sharp nose and two wicked eyes. In other words, it ain't your usual bird head. Oh yes, did I mention that they don't have a beak? No beak whatsoever. That's pretty important clue right there. It ain't natural. Show me a bird with a beak that I've got some questions to ask him. Another thing about the silver monster birds is that they have shiny feathers. Not your usual dull brown or glossy black, but bright, shiny silver feathers. And a lot of monster birds will have a white marking on the side that resembles a star. They have big drooping wings, and several things grow out from their undersides. I call them things because I don't have a technical term for them yet. Whatever they are. Starlings and blackbirds and sparrows don't have them. They may be poison stingers, I don't know. The silver monster bird don't flap their wings. They glide like a buzzard or a hawk. And did I mention that they roar? Yes, sir. They roar, and I mean loud. An ordinary bird doesn't do that. He might cheep or squeak or sing a little tune, but you rarely find one that roars. It's the roar that makes a silver monster bird a little scary. It takes a special kind of dog to stand up to that roar, hold its ground, and keep barking. I suspect that even some cow dogs would run from the terrible sound. But on this ranch, we don't run from danger, we run to it. Anyway, the day last week, I caught a silver monster bird trying to slip into the ranch. He should have known he couldn't get away with it. I mean, the roar is a dead giveaway. My ears are sensitive to some certain sounds, and there aren't any roars get past me. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to hear the rest of the book, check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Matt, and I'm reading Dream of the Creature from the school cafeteria. It was lunchtime. Our class walked slowly toward the cafeteria, holding our noses. We could smell the food all the way down the hall. It was also making funny noises. We opened the cafeteria door. We took our trays and were about to line up when we backed away from the lunch counter and hold. The food was moving. It burbled and gurgled in the pans. Then it slippered out of the pans, over the side of the counter, and across the cafeteria floor. It was coming at us. We threw our lunch trays in the air and ran out of the door. Mrs. Crub, the cook, ran out of the cafeteria shouting at the food. She tried to hit it with her serving spoon. The food burst over the white shoes, and she was gone. We ran into the main office, called the sheriff. We all shouted, "Now what's wrong?" said Mrs. Bagley, the principal. "The food is after us," we screamed. Now, said Mrs. Bagley, opening the office door and stepping out. "There's absolutely nothing to blurb." She never finished her sentence. She just disappeared into the bubbling green. We ran into her office and locked the door. Through the glass, we could see the food eating all the safety posters. He burst and took. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to hear more about this book, check it out at your local library.
My name is Mark, and I'm reading The Berenstein Bears and The Galloping Ghost. Like all cubs, brother and sister bear had their favorite things. They had favorite foods and drinks, favorite songs and games, favorite school subjects and TV shows. They also had favorite kinds of storybooks. Sister loved horse stories. Brother couldn't get enough spooky stories and ghost stories. One spring day after school, brother and sister were at the Bear Country Library stocking up on books for the next couple of weeks. Then they were finished finding books they wanted. They met at the front counter and checked them out. Mrs. Goodbear, the librarian, raised her eyebrows as she placed a hand on the stack of 5 books that Brother had chosen. I see you're still into the adventures of the Great Bear Detective Grizzlylocks Holmes and his faithful assistant, Mr. Bearson, she said. Can you really read all these books in 2 weeks? Piece of cake, Brother said. I love mysteries. Don't they give you nightmares? Asked Miss Goodbear. Nah, the scarier the better. What about you, sister? Asked Miss Goodbear. I like horse stories, said Sister, pushing her 2 books toward the librarian. They were titled Brown Beauty and Misty of Grizzlytons. I think horses are the most beautiful animals in the whole world. Have you ever tried a mystery story? Asked Miss Goodbear. Sister shook her head. She's afraid of spooky stuff, teased Brother. She'll never read a mystery for us as long as she lives. Sister frowned. Now wait a minute, she said. I might read one someday. Then she added, if it's a horse mystery. You mean like Grizzlylock Holmes and the Haunted Horseman? Thanks for listening to me read. If you want to hear how the story ends, check it out at your local library.
Hello, my name is Andrew, and the name of the book that I'm reading is The Time of the Dinosaurs. I'll be sure to ask Axe we ever see him again. If we ever see him again. Or maybe if Elmist messed me up when he gave me back the powers, I'd be relieved to think the guy cabbled or screwing up. The morph to human, we have to get going. Don't ask me where. No, I need to heal. What will take time? I have to stay in my own body, for it will heal. But first I need to set my broken wing. What? I'm not Cassie. You've ever seen her do it? So I have. Oh man, Rachel moaned. What am I going to use for bandages? Part of your morphing outfit, that is some of the twigs. Oh man, Rachel said. I wish Cassie were here. She began to demorph in massive shoulders and head and lumbering hanches. The shaggy fur and huge, powerful paws. I shrank and melted gradually, and a very beautiful human girl emerged. Rachel looked down at her morphing outfit. It was a bear morph midriff. Look, she said. She tried to tear the hole in the fabric. My fingernails are too short. Here, bend down and bend. She bent close, and I used my bait to make a tear in the fabric. If you want to hear the rest of the book, you can check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Devaney, and I'm going to read the book Runaway Ralph. Chapter 1. Ralph Hear the Distant Bugle. A small brown mouse named Ralph, who was hiding under the grandfather clock, did not have much longer to wait before he could ride his motorcycle. The clock had struck 8 already, and then 8:30. Ralph was the only mouse in the Mountain View Inn, a rundown hotel in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada, who owned a motorcycle. It was a mouse-sized red motorcycle, a present from a boy named Keith who had been a guest in room 215 over the 4th of July weekend. Ralph was proud of his motorcycle, but his brothers and sisters said he was selfish. "I am not," said Ralph. Keith gave the motorcycle to me. That evening, while Ralph waited under the clock and watched the television set across the lobby, a man and a woman followed by a medium-sized boy walked into the hotel. They had the rumpled look on the people who had driven many miles that day. The boy was wearing jeans, cowboy boots, and a white t-shirt with the words "Happy Acres Camp" stenciled across the front. Ralph observed the boy with interest. He was the right kind of boy, a boy to like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Since the day Keith had left the hotel, Ralph had longed for crumbs of peanut butter and jelly sandwich. A grating, grinding noise came from the works of the grandfather clock. Ralph clapped his paws over his ears. The clock grumbled and groaned and managed to strike the hour 9 o'clock. The time almost had come. The stroke of 9 was followed by the slow, sad notes of the music, lingered and died mysteriously in the distance every night at this time. "Did you hear that?" the man asked the boy. It was the bungle of camp players' taps. "So that's what the music is," thought Ralph. So, thank you for listening to me read. If you want to read the rest of the story, check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Kevin, and the book I'm going to read is Maniac McGee. Maniac McGee was not born in a dump. He was born in a house, a pretty ordinary house, right across the river from here, in Bridgeport. And he had regular parents, a mother and a father, but not for long. One day, his parents left him with a sitter and took the P&W high-speed trolley into the city. On the way back home, they were on board when the P&W had its famous crash, when the motorman was drunk and took the high trestle over the Sky Hill River at 60 miles an hour, and the whole caboodle took a swan dive into the water. And just like that, Maniac was an orphan. He was 3 years old. Of course, to be accurate, he wasn't really Maniac then. He was Jeffrey Lionel McGee. Little Jeffrey was shipped off to his nearest relatives, Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan, that lived in Hollidaysburg in the western part of Pennsylvania. Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan hated each other, but because they were strict Catholics, they wouldn't get a divorce. Around the time Jeffrey arrived, they stopped talking to each other. Then they stopped sharing. Pretty soon there were 2 of everything in the house. 2 bathrooms, 2 TVs, 2 refrigerators, 2 toasters. If it were possible, they would have 2 Jeffreys. As it was, they split them up as best they could. For instance, he would eat dinner with Aunt Dot on Monday and Uncle Dan on Tuesday, and so on. 8 years of that. Then came the night of spring musical at Jeffrey's school. He was in the chorus. There was only one show, and one auditorium, so Aunt Dot and Uncle Dan were forced to share at least that much. Aunt Dot sat on one side, Uncle Dan on the other. Jeffrey probably started screaming from the start of the song, which was "Talk to the Animals," but nobody knew it because he was drowned out by all the other voices. Then the music ended, and Jeffrey went right on screaming, his face bright red by now, his neck bulging. The music director faced the singers, frozen with his arms still raised. Then the audience faces began to change. There was a quick smatter of giggling by some people who figured out the screaming kid was some part of the show, some funny animal maybe. Then the giggling stopped, eyes turned to shift, and heads started to turn, because now everybody could see that this wasn't part of the show at all, that little Jeffrey McGee wasn't supposed to be out there on the risers.
pointing to his aunt and uncle bellowing from the midst of the course. Talk, talk, will ya? Talk, talk. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to find out how the end of the story is, then check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Emily, and I'm going to read to you Here's to You, Rachel Robinson. Trouble in our family has been spelled with a capital C and has been as long as I can remember. The C stands for Charles. He's my older brother, 2 years and 4 months older to be exact. Ever since the phone call about him last night, I felt incredibly tense. And now at this very minute, my parents are driving up to Vermont to Charles' boarding school to find out if he's actually been kicked out or if he's just been suspended again. I tried to take a deep breath. I read an article about relieving televisions in Physiology Today. You take a deep breath and count to 10 as you slowly release it. But as I inhaled it, I caught the scent of the fresh lilacs on Miss Lefford's desk, and I started to cough. Miss Lefford, my 7th grade English teacher, looked over. She was discussing the 3 most important elements in making a biography come alive for the reader. When I coughed again, she crossed the room and opened 2 windows from the bottom, letting in the spring breeze. The class was restless, shifting around in their seats, counting the hours till school let out so they could enjoy the first really warm day of the year. The big clock on the wall read 10:17. The day was just beginning, and the date on the chalkboard said Friday, May 8th. Still 7 weeks of school to go. I forced my mind back to class. So now that we've come to the end of our unit on biographies, Miss Lefford was saying, I have an assignment for you. She walked back to her desk and stood there, looking at us, a half smile on her face. She knows exactly how to get our attention. She makes good use of pregnant pauses. I once used that expression in class, and I have been paying for it ever since. Now I would know better. Now I would say dramatic pauses. I want you to write a biography for your own lives, Miss Lefford continued. Not an autobiography, but a biography. Who can explain the difference? She took a hair clip out of her desk drawer and held it between her teeth while she gathered her streaked blonde hair into a ponytail. She looked around the room as she fastened it, waiting for someone to respond to her question. Max Wilson raised his hand. Yes, Max? Miss Lefford said. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to know how this story ends, then check it out at your local library.
Hello, my name is Shelby, and I'll be reading Good Driving Amelia Bedelia. Amelia Bedelia walked into the kitchen. Mr. and Mrs. Rogers sang out, Happy birthday, Amelia Bedelia. Thank you, said Amelia Bedelia. Take the day off to celebrate, said Mrs. Rogers. I'll go visit my cousin, said Amelia Bedelia. Use our car, said Mr. Rogers. Oh, I have not driven in years, said Amelia Bedelia. Is your license still good? Said Mrs. Rogers. It's great, said Amelia Bedelia. See how nice my picture looks? Your license is fine, said Mr. Rogers. Let's see if your driving is as good as your picture. Meet me at the car. A short drive in the country will do you good. They backed out of the driveway. Away they went. Amelia Bedelia drove very carefully. What a beautiful farm, said Mr. Rogers. Yes, said Amelia Bedelia. And what nice bunches of cows. Herd of the cows, said Mr. Rogers. Herd of the cows? Herd of the cows, asked Amelia Bedelia. Of course, I have heard of cows. No, said Mr. Rogers, I mean a cow herd. So what is a cow herd? Said Amelia Bedelia. I didn't say anything bad.
Some cows had wandered onto the road. Watch out, said Mr. Rogers. Nobody stopped the car. Steered straight ahead, and Mr. Rogers. No, said Mr. Rogers. No, said Amelia Bedelia. The steer's behind us. A cow with big horns looked into the window, pushed on the horns, and Mr. Rogers. Amelia Bedelia gently pushed the cow's horn. Woo! Mr. Rogers pushed hard on the car horn. Honk. The cow ran back into the field. Mr. Rogers took out the road map and I am looking for a crossroad, he said. It will have signs to tell us where to go. I'll go for a walk, said Amelia Bedelia. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to find out how the story ends, you can check it out at your local library.
Hi, my name is Michael, and I'm going to read Berenstain Bears Gotta Dance. Chapter 1, Brother's Big Problem. The smell of the flowers and the new leaves filled the air as brother and sister walked home from school. It was the time that the year when both softball and basketball are played. Brother spent the whole walk home telling sister about the base hits, and he made morning recesses and the baskets he had had during afternoon recess. Finally, he ran out of things to brag about, so sister changed the subject to something she found more interesting. Did I tell you I'm going to have a party at Lizzie Burnham's tonight? She asked. Well, we'll be doing all the new steps. We'll dance till we drop. Brother made a face. Great, sis. We're going to jump around to dopey music all day, all night. What a stupid thing to do. Sister frowned. Why did brother always make fun of dancing? Was it because she liked it so much? Sister tried to think of something mean about to say about words, but then she had a better idea. Have you ever heard the rumor about Bonnie Brown? She asked. They say she's gonna go invite Too Tall Grizzly to the spring dance. Brother didn't answer. He just stared ahead, looking very hurt. Brother was surprised by his feelings. It wasn't as if Bonnie were boyfriend and girlfriend, but they had just played Romeo and Juliet in a spring play. They had become good friends. As for Too Tall, how could she ask him to the dance? Bonnie thought Too Tall was awful. Sister could see that her news had hit home. She thought, my dance hating big brother has a real problem. Brother didn't have a problem. Oh, brother did have a problem. Brother had been thinking about Bonnie lately. He even started to feel that he would like to be more than just friends with Bonnie. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to know how the story ends, check it out at your local library.
I'm Doug Huston, and I'm reading The Silver Chair. But it was chilly even so, and the ground was hard and lumpy. The Marsh Wiggle told them they would feel more comfortable if only they thought how very much colder it would be later on and further north, but this didn't cheer them up at all. They traveled across Ettinsmoor for many days, saving the bacon and living chiefly on the moorfowl. They were not, of course, talking birds, which Eustace and the Wiggle shot. Jill rather eyed Eustace for being able to shoot. He had learned it on his voyage with King Caspian. As there were countless streams on the moor, they were never short of water. Still, that when in books people live on what they shoot. It never tells you a long, smelly, messy job it is. Plucking and cleaning dead birds, and how cold it makes your fingers. But the great thing was that they met hardly any giant. One giant saw them, but he only roared with laughter and stumped away about his own business. About the 10th day, they reached a place where the country changed. They came to the northern edge of the moor and looked down a long, steep slope into a different and grimmer land. At the very bottom of the slope were cliffs. Beyond these, a country of high mountains, dark precipices, stone valleys, ravens so deep and narrow that one could not see far into them, and rivers that poured out of echoing gorges to plunge suddenly into black depths. Thank you for listening to me read. If you want to find out what happens next, please go to your local library.
Reading rules!
What rules?
Reading!
Where do you go to school?
Pleasant Valley School!
And what grade are you in?
4th grade!
And what rules?
Reading!